Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
We are pretty excited today, aren't we?
For sure.
Cannot believe that we're celebrating 100 episodes of the podcast. How did we get here?
Good question. I have no idea.
Well, here's an answer for this milestone. We thought it'd be really super special to invite to host the session our Podfather, Tolu, who got us started on this in the first place. Welcome, Tolu.
Thank you both so much. It's honestly an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here for your 100th episode. That's amazing. Congratulations.
You were there with us at the beginning, episode 0, actually.
More than that, you were the one who challenged us to just hit record and get going. And Here we are, 100 episodes later. So Tolu, we're in your hands again. You drive this machine. Just help us reflect on the journey so far. In your hands.
Absolutely. And most podcasts never make it this far. So firstly, a massive congratulations to you both, because the journey is not always easy. But what I've really loved to see is some of the impact that you guys have had. And that's really what we're going to be talking about a little bit today as well.
Oh, bless you. High five.
Thank you. Yeah.
High five.
So I think my first question for you is, when you look back over your 100 episodes, what's really surprised you that you didn't expect at the beginning?
That's a really good question. I think we didn't expect that we would be, I don't want it to sound arrogant, but we didn't expect that we'd be learning as much as we've been learning. They've become real conversations of wisdom and insight to sharpen us and keep us at the growing edge of everything that we talk about. Didn't know if I had that in mind when we started.
Well, I think when we did the first episode, in my mind, certainly, it was, we're going to be sharing stuff from our 25, 30 years of working in this space. It's going to be us sharing stuff. And I think that was my concern, actually. I was like, we're going to run out of stuff to say. We've got a lot of very good stuff, but if you just keep going, at some point, you're going to run out of stuff.
Yeah, I think if we even thought about 100, it would have scared us back then.
But I think what's blown me away is just having conversations with people out there. I mean, when I look back, I just did some quick analysis while we were preparing for this episode. I think we've done something like, we did the first 9, and then ever since then, we've only done another, I think it's 5 that we've done, just Andrea and myself, just the two of us together. The rest have been various guests. And I guess the other fear would have been, well, where are all these guests going to come from? And it's just been amazing where people have come from. We've been, we haven't been backward in coming forward and asking people, but recommendations, other people coming to us, people saying, we hear what you're doing, we'd love to come on the show. And it's just blown us away. Yeah,
I was going to say, we have quite a few people approaching us now, asking if their clients can be guests on our podcast. And we have the luxury of choosing. And the other thing we didn't expect is it's become a real repository, like this library of resources. So when people have a question about a particular topic, usually there's a guest we've interviewed or a conversation we've had together where we can just say, here, have a listen to this, or send it to a client, dealing with psychological safety or compassionate leadership or something, or inclusion, and we can just send them to an episode that we've done to help give them insight into how they can think about things or how we might be able to help them. So it's become a real a rich resource of a repository of great information.
And on that, I find myself in conversation with various people. There'll be people sharing about challenges they're going through and so on. I'm thinking, hang on, go watch this podcast. This particular episode will help you. Absolutely. There's some really, really great stuff out there. The other interesting insight, just very quickly again from doing the analysis of the podcast, is we have a very high, much higher than I was thinking, percentage of men listening in.
Yeah, that was
and that really blew me away. I'm like, why? Interestingly, we also did the analysis to see what the guest split has been between male and female guests, or men and women. And it's not quite 50-50. It's slightly more women than men. I can't remember the exact number.
Like 51-49 or something like that.
It's very close, but slightly more women than men. But the men listening, almost 78% of the audience. I'm like, wow, that is a big old number. And either that says the women already know the stuff about relationships, and the men are trying to learn, men are trying to play catch up. I think this is what's going on here.
Either that, or maybe they prefer the listening mode to the reading mode.
To books, absolutely. Could be any number of factors, I jest. But it was really interesting to see that, and a lot of the listeners clearly on YouTube, but also on Apple Podcast is where a lot of the listening is coming from. So yeah, we're just delighted to be here.
Yeah, and delighted that it's making a difference. And we'll say thank you at the end, but we'll say thank you right now to our audience. Thank you for coming on the journey with us and helping to shape what it's become. And keep listening and keep sharing,
and keep sending us your thoughts
on
what else you want to hear, what else you'd be interested in hearing from this podcast. How can they help your relationships, whether it's enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, win at life? What else can we be doing to help and support you where you are?
Indeed.
You kind of jumped the question I was going to ask you, because you've had over 80 guests, which is, firstly, that's a mind-blowing number of guests to have had. But there's often a few themes that come through in each of the podcasts. So I wanted to ask for, there are people who have been with us since episode 1 to episode 100, but this might be someone's first episode listening. So why don't you just give like a really high-level overview of like, what is the podcast about? What are the themes that you cover? And what do those 80 plus guests and 100 episodes all have in common across them?
Yeah,
beautiful. Well, I'll reiterate the point. I mean, we started it with the mindset, the objective of helping people enjoy better harmony at home, help them thrive at work, and help them win at life. We thought that would give 3 channels, work life or home life, work life, and just life out there. And so we asked all the guests coming on the show to tailor their responses into one of those channels if possible, or cover 1, 2, or 3, and some of them actually cover all 3.
Wow.
Which has been really interesting, because as we found, relationships are relationships, people are people. How they relate to other people impacts how they show up at home, how they show up at work, and how they show up in the clubs, on their football field, in whatever it happens to be that they're doing. So those are the 3 themes. And really, the other point I guess to make here is, all the guests, before we go live, one of the things we say to the guests is, this is not a live recording. It doesn't air live. We record it, we pre-record, and then we put them out. But one of the things that our audience love is examples. If you can share examples of stuff in action where you've seen things happening with people you've been speaking to, the audience love that. But it can take us into danger territory when you start sharing things and you think, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I've given away too much, etc. So we say to them, calm down. It's not live. We can edit things out. But we have very rarely.
Very
I think one example where we had to do that, where
you can share that example,
where somebody shared something about when she was making love with her husband. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No, that's a family show. It's a family show.
Hadn't cleared it with hubby, so maybe we'll edit that one out. But you're right. We realized that the overarching theme of the podcast is building healthy relationships, and the subtitle, or the understanding foundational to the 3 different themes, is that quality relationships literally, or the quality of your relationships literally determine the quality of your life. So whichever lens you're looking at life through, work, home, life in general, the quality of relationships is a theme going through there. So people would come with their particular backstory, their particular area of expertise. But one of the questions we were always curious about is, what role did relationships play in that? And more it became obvious that relationships, or quality relationships, was really the backbone on which everything was built: home, work, life.
No, it's such an important thing that often goes so overlooked. So I just find it amazing that you guys are really diving into this in lots of different ways, and I think it's really helpful for people. How would you describe the journey from episode 1 to now, and how has the podcast shaped the way that you both see work?
What a great question. So the journey has been one of learning and iteration, I think. If we jump to a question that you could ask, what would we say to our episode 1 self? In the beginning, it was, we have to really script this. We have to be so professional and structured and come across like we know everything. And what we've learned to do over the episodes is to just relax into the conversation
And have a conversation.
have a really meaningful conversation, ask the next logical question. And of course, you do some prep. You know the trends that are happening in the workplace, the issues happening in society. You ask intelligent questions around those trends and that context, but that you trust yourself to know that you can turn up and engage and make it meaningful given the topic of conversation for the day.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. What would you say?
I think also it's been fascinating to see just how much wisdom there is out there. There are a lot of very learned people out there. Also a lot of wackos, but we won't go into
Yeah,
them.
we had some of those. Editing out. Like, no, we won't. We'll skip that and go to the next one for the next
Or even
episode.
filtering out in terms of some of the applications that come through. I'm like, really?
Absolutely.
What? You want us to talk about this? No, I don't think so. But there's some real wisdom out there. And I mean, we maybe somewhat arrogantly thought we knew about relationships. And I think there's a fair bit that we do know. But there's just so much more out there that could impact relationships. So we love talking to people who have oftentimes they've made a study of it. There's some people there's one guy who I think had 3 masters and a PhD in the space. You're like, oh my goodness, this is serious stuff. But just real deep insights into looking at relationships from all sorts of different angles.
Different lenses.
That I think is the key thing. And what has really helped us on this journey is clarify what it is that we're doing and what's our message and what's the impact that we have. There's so many people we've had on the show who've spoken about being intentional about relationships. That word intentionality has come up time and time and time again. That is really at the core of relationships. Relationships will happen to you, for better or for worse. If you're intentional about how they happen, they're more likely to go well for you. So be intentional, learn the skills, build the muscle, develop the habits, do what it takes to enjoy successful relationships.
And I guess the wisdom, you've had niche specialists, so it's helped us to drill down into particular areas. For example, one that comes to mind is the conversation we had with, I'm going to try and remember her name, Schweigart. Bronwyn Schweigart, where we know about anger, and the narrative that we all have is you need to manage anger and contain it and like put a lid on this emotion. And she just blew that theory out the window and said you need to almost interrogate your anger. You need to pay attention to it because it's telling you something about a boundary that's been crossed. So you don't suppress it, honor it, and find out what it's trying to tell you, because that will allow you to then turn up better and have a better conversation. So in the wisdom over the conversations we've had for each episode, it's about sharpening our skills and going even deeper in specific areas. Is what we get.
I'm just thinking at the end, what we can do is like any episodes that we reference, we can put a link in the show notes so people can get to them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Nice and easily. Just light bulb moment came to me there.
I think I really liked what you said about intentional, because when I think about the 4 habits, they're all very intentional. And I think what's really interesting when I listen as a listener is that you've got experts in lots of different things, and then you're adding your 4 habits and intentional lens on top of it. And that creates something really, really nice, because actually you've got experts talking to experts and both sides are learning new things. And I think that's what I really love when I listen to the podcast, is actually how that dynamic goes through.
Wow,
that's a really powerful point, because, and this is going back to the point John made about talking with others has helped us clarify our own space and understand what it is that we do that adds value. And the 4 habits really give you the scaffolding for doing relationships well. They give you that structure of how to be intentional. And, to digress a bit, usually when people talk about relationships, they might zero in on conflict resolution or on personality profiles, understanding yourself and self-awareness. Usually it's 1 of the 4 or 2 of the 4. The 4 habits give you the scaffolding across all 4. And usually habit 4 is missing. We can talk about self-awareness, conflict management, even assumptions and biases and core beliefs. But very rarely do we talk about how do you intentionally communicate value and love and appreciation in a consistent way. So scaffolding is the word that's come
Love
to
it.
me for that. That helps create the space of what we add to the mix.
And for those who don't know, what are the 4 habits?
Ooh,
good question.
Let's see if we can remember them.
Yeah.
So we'll bounce between us. And the way we like to describe it, or the way we've learned to describe it now, is before jumping into the 4 habits, to talk about the 4 areas of difference that will always cause relational tension until you become aware of them and know how to overcome them. So the 4 areas of potential or almost inevitable relational tension are a misunderstanding of differences in personalities and work styles, differences in the way we turn up to conflict. Usually the way we're wired is unhelpful. There are 4 different ways. All of them are unhelpful. Differences in the way that we are in the way that we think, our assumptions, our cultural beliefs, and therefore the expectations that we impose on others, and differences in the way that we feel valued and appreciated. And so the 4 habits are intentional behaviors to develop to overcome the challenges that you will inevitably face. That's why it's great scaffolding and intentionality. So habit 1.
If I jump in there, habit 1 is be curious, not critical. And we need that in the face of difference, where somebody does something different to how we would have done it. And we lived this one out back in the day, just very quickly.
This was our number 1 learning.
When we set up in business, and I knew in my head, I knew exactly how to do everything right. And in my head, again, Andrew just had some funny ideas.
And you still kind of think that, to be fair. But we've learned to discuss it better.
Ideas have improved. No. The way I handle my thoughts, the way I handle my thinking is actually what's changed. Whereas in the past, I would have been critical and think, sometimes it came out like this as well. You silly so-and-so, what are you doing that for? This is the way to do it. And sometimes it doesn't come out, but we think that. Actually, a much better way of handling it, handling those differences, just get curious and just say, help me understand. I'd never have thought of doing it like that. Help me understand. Why did you do it like that? That's so interesting. If you can adopt that mindset, it's much better for the relationship rather than getting critical.
And it's also realizing that there's a strength that led to doing it that way. So it's digging for the goal, finding what the strength is and how you can pull together as a team better when you do.
And then quickly, habit number 2, be careful not crushing, is when that conflict inevitably happens. How you handle it makes all the difference. Conflict is going to happen. It's not the conflict that's the problem. It's how you handle it. If you handle it well, the relationship can absolutely be improved. If you handle it badly, the wheels can come off very quickly and things can spiral out of control. So that's habit 2. Habit 3, ask, don't assume. Hugely important. It's a big one, where we unpack how people handle habit number 3. And I guess at the core of that, a lot of us think that because something is important to me, it's going to be important to you as well. And because it's not important to me, well, of course, it can't be important to you as well. And nothing can be further from the truth. So it really is about taking the time to ask those questions, understand, firstly, what's important to you, and then what's important to the people around you, and then putting boundaries in place to make sure things work well is at the core of habit 3.
And that goes deep into vulnerability. That's why it's a big one, because you need to be honest about the things that really matter and not just sweep those harder, more difficult conversations under the carpet, because that will absolutely create an emotional barrier, an emotional wall. And that's true whether it's at home or at work or in life. You find yourself distancing from people. Usually it's something that needs to be discussed that hasn't been discussed. And the easier thing is to step back or leave.
Oh, and then quickly, so habit number 4, as Andrea touched on earlier, connect before you correct, is really about showing value to people in meaningful ways, to make that connection, to do things that land well in the other person's emotional bank account, a concept we haven't spoken about on today's show, but really sits at the core of the work that we do. Because we're constantly making withdrawals from other people's emotional bank accounts. And I think people will kind of get where we're going with that, even just saying it like that. And what we need to do is manage those the balances in other people's emotional bank accounts and make less withdrawals. And of course, they're unintentional. None of us are going out there trying to wreck our relationships. You're not going into work trying to pee your boss off. you're doing things
Well, I
with your
hope not.
colleague, or you might be doing things that are irritating them, and they're like, what are you doing that for? So recognize what you're doing unintentionally and stop doing those, stop making those withdrawals, and actually make deposits on purpose. And habits 3 and 4 help you make deposits. Habits 1 and 2 help you minimize withdrawals. And habit 4, connect before you correct, is a great way to intentionally make deposits with people around you. And I think what lands it with a lot of people is when they think about relationships between parent and child, especially teenagers. Any parent of a teenager will know that the teenagers aren't going to listen to you unless you have a connection with them.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes in all kinds of relationships. Where you have a connection with people, it's almost like you have permission to speak into their lives. They will listen to you. You get their permission. You get their ear. If you don't have that connection, they can ghost you. Let's kind of use some updated terminology. They're just not interested in you. They're not interested in hearing what you have to say. So those are very quickly are the
well, to that, a line we like to use is people like to know you have their backs instead of just being on their backs. And quite often we feel like people are on our backs. How do we make them know we genuinely have their backs? And so that's the scaffolding. But the backdrop to that is to understand that, as John said with the emotional bank account, everything we say and do has an impact, has emotional content in our conversations. And just knowing that this emotional bank account concept sits, this idea of every interaction either landing well or landing badly, that helps us want to turn up better and be more intentional about our behaviors. And then the 4 habits help you know what to be intentional about.
And just quickly jumping on there, we've gone into teaching mode, but just very quickly,
this is why I came here.
Recognize when we do, this is one of the key concepts in the workshops that we run. Is for people to recognize that withdrawals and deposits are nothing to do with your intentions. You might mean that you might have the best will in the world. You say to people, I've said this, I did this with a good heart. If their perception is that it was negative, it was a withdrawal, that's all that matters. That's all that counts. That's the only thing that
that's how it lands.
in the emotional bank account. So there are things that we're doing unintentionally that are landing badly. We need to get better at spotting those things and stopping doing them. Don't leave it there, because if you leave the emotional bank account drained, you're still going to be like your financial bank account in the red. Everything can be a problem. You've got to make deposits on purpose. And that's where habits 3 and 4, as I say, help you make those deposits to bring you back up into positive territory. And that's where you get your best chance of having a successful relationship at home, at work, in life.
Yeah.
I love that distinction, because sometimes we think we're making deposits, but we're not even doing it in the currency that person accepts. So actually,
I love that.
We've got to think about, like, how is it going to land on the ledger? Are they going to see that because I understand their language in the way that I intended it? So I think that's a really nice distinction. I think that's a really nice.
I'm trying to spend some dollars here, but I'm in China.
It's
interesting, but I don't think them in my shop.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just wanted to ask you about some of the standout moments. So, we mentioned that we've got these 3 different areas, and what I want you to do is take 2 or 3 minutes per area that we have. So the first one is going to be harmony at home, and just take 2 or 3 minutes to say, what are some of the standout moments from episodes about harmony at home?
I'll jump off with that because it links back to, lessons we've learned and how it's helped us become more intentional. And one of the conversations we had, which was more about harmony at home, was with Karen Holford, who is a wonderful friend, a family therapist with decades of experience. And one of the things she spoke about was oxytocin, that bonding, what is it?
Love hormone.
That really bonds you, and the importance of touch and connecting as a couple at least 10 times a day, because 10 times. And so it made us more intentional. One of the habits we had before we heard this, for example, is we always kiss and greet each other when one is coming in the door and the other's at home, or when we're leaving,
even when we don't feel like it, by the way.
Especially then.
We do.
That's one of the habits.
To do it.
Well, it challenges us, especially if we've fallen out over something. It challenges us to think, is it worth holding on to the angst or the grudge and not kissing? Or, it gives you a decision point to say, you know what, we can figure it out later, but we're going to still stick with the habits because that keeps us connected and opens the door for a better conversation. But when Karen shared this about those 10 moments, we realized that one is great, but it's just one. What else can you do during the day to intentionally keep oxytocin flowing and keeping the connection strong? So that was one for me. Harry Benson also spoke about in his book what women want and what moms want and what dads need to know. Is that the right way around?
Yep.
And what moms want are three things, Tolu.
You dads need to know. There you go.
They want you to be a friend. They want you to love their kids. And they want you to be kind. Three things. If you focus on those three things and be intentional about it. So those were three standout moments for me with Harmony at Home. What about you?
There are loads. I mean, there are loads. It's almost one of those questions when they ask you, which is your favorite child, and you can't choose. There's so many good moments there. Probably less impactful for me personally, but actually just things that I hadn't thought of it like that before. Well, something that actually touched us personally was sadly when Andrea lost her high school friend,
best friend from high school,
from high school, who sadly life was taken. She was killed by her husband, and who then shot himself. So tragic, very, really, really sad story. But it got us thinking around domestic abuse and how the wheels can come off quickly, and the tragedy that can come as a result. And there was one episode we did with
fairly recently,
Felicity Okolo, who shared she had been through domestic violence herself and managed to get out. And her thinking was, and we asked her, why do some people stay in domestic abuse? Why don't they get out? How easy is it to get out? What do you need to get out? All the questions there. And she said, the moment you are hit or touched the first time, whether it's man on woman, woman on man, man on man, woman on, it doesn't matter. In any relationship, the moment you are touched the first time in an inappropriate way, you need to be thinking, what do I need to do to get out of this?
To be safe.
So it doesn't mean leave straight away, of course. That's not what she was saying there, but she's saying start developing your plan then. Because chances are, if it's happened once, chances are it's going to happen again. And a lot of people make excuses and, they didn't mean it, they forgive me, all the reasons there.
Yeah.
But she said, don't just create a mental plan, actually put in place a plan. And there are actually organizations out there that can help you put a plan together. It's got to be a clear plan. You know what you're doing, when you're going to go, how you're going to go, all that kind of stuff. Because if you stick around, sadly, you may end up like our friend Heather, who lost her life.
Yeah.
You don't want to clearly you don't want to be there. So just things like that, putting that plan in place. I never really thought about that. I thought, well, do you forgive? Do you go again? You're like, no. Put your plan in place and ask for help. There are people out there who can help you put plans in place.
Because nothing will change until their skill levels change. So
and then on a lighter note, another episode that we did, I think this was Jan Blackstone, the insight for me there was the language and messaging around relationships. And she was talking about, I think it was divorce and adoption. Not adoption, it was divorce and a new family. She was now in a blended family. And she was saying the language that quite often we have around my stepchildren and step parents and all that kind of stuff is fairly negative language.
And loaded, very loaded.
Yeah. And actually what she did was flip that on its head completely. And she used language which was very different. She now refers to her, what we would have called a stepdaughter, as her bonus daughter. It's a daughter I never thought I'd have had before. This is my bonus daughter, my bonus family. I'm like, whoa, that's some real positive spin.
It changes
the dynamic between herself and her daughter in the family, everybody about this being a bonus rather than a step is almost like a step back. Was just interesting. So it just struck me that the language we use in relationships and relating to other people is just so important. Couple of thoughts there.
Absolutely. And I just to go back to Heather, I remember talking to you guys when that happened, and like you said, John, like that's not something that's ever been in my life before, but it also made me think differently about how I interact with my friends. Like my friends who are in relationships, like what questions do I ask them? Actually, how do I make sure that whether it's my male friend who could be doing it or my female friend who could, like, actually, how do I make sure I'm asking the right questions to
Yeah.
really know what's going on
Yeah.
and be able to offer that support? And I think it's just so important. I think that that's also something we should put in the show notes, is some of those organizations that can actually help people who are going through those situations. But
Absolutely.
I know that wasn't an easy thing to talk about as an episode, but I think it's just so important. It's just so important.
That's a good shout, actually, to have help in the show notes, because sadly, since COVID, the incidence of domestic abuse, domestic violence has just gone up. There's somebody else we spoke with who said we shouldn't even call it domestic, because that kind of almost puts the focus on the woman. It's something about safety at home. I don't remember the language.
It must be, is that Sabrina? Also safe? Yeah.
Also safe. It's about how to be safe in the home. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll put the episodes in the links, and certainly in Felicity's episode, they're all the links there, but you need to go to. And if you're looking for help, check out the links in the note there. So we'll put some of these things in the show notes.
Amazing. What about thriving at work? What were your standout moments? And we need to stick to the 2 to 3
I know,
minutes.
to the 2 minutes. All right. Two standout moments for me. One is with Charlie Simpson, who spoke about listening and how important listening is, and that we don't really listen to each other. We actually lie to each other. So you ask each other after a tough weekend, how was your weekend? And we go, fine. Everybody says it was fine.
Yeah.
But to really listen, we have to be willing to get past fine down to the stuff and be able to give people the space and the sense of safety and care that you are available and you really do care, so that they will feel safe to go down to what's really going on. So that was one, how to really listen well. And the other one was with Peterson, when Reverend Peterson Fatal, when he spoke about compassionate leadership, and he spoke really deeply about the pain he had gone through when leaders who could have stood by him decided to go silent because of reputational damage, rather than having the courage to do the right thing to change what was happening with the discrimination against him, because it was the right thing to do. They thought about personal cost instead. So compassionate leadership is moving beyond empathy, where you just feel sorry for the person, to having compassion, whereas you have the courage to do something about it, even if it means risking your reputation as well.
And for me, I think a number of episodes, at least 3 I can think of. There was certainly Katie and Emmy. I think Stuart Love and Yatunde were the 3, where they all...
And Al Miller, who spoke
and
about...
Al Miller. Yeah. Al Miller, you're quite right. In talking about... Yeah, Stuart his name was Love.
But he also spoke
about it.
With inclusion.
But the point there was, they all, in talking about leadership, said leadership has to start with love. Those 4 letters, L-O-V, I had to check, is it 4 or 5? No. L-O-V-E, love. I thought, really? In a corporate setting, you go in there talking about love? And they said, absolutely, 100%. Wow. It all comes down to that, because there are other words that you try and use don't really capture it. They don't really capture at the core, what is it? You've got to love your people. And I love how, who was it? Was it Jeanette? It was Jeanette Bronny who spoke about this whole concept of caring about people, not caring for people. You got to, if you care about them, it was just a little nuance, a little subtlety in the words there. But if you care about them, you do something about it. It's not about caring for. It's not about providing caring services for them.
Yeah.
It's caring about them and doing what it takes to bring them on side, and just little things like that. So these are all, as I say, subtle nuances in language, but they make a difference in certainly in our mindset as to what leadership should be. How do you lead? How do you lead well?
I was going to jump in there, and how Katie and Emmy capture leadership is it's looking after the flourishing of the people in your charge. Yeah. That's your job as a leader. Yeah. How do you create the environment for them to flourish?
If you love them well, they'll flourish.
Yeah.
They'll flourish. What about winning at life?
Who did we have in Winning at Life? Oh, so many. I mean, everything that we've spoken about so far is applicable to Winning at Life as well. But 2 for me, I mentioned Bronwyn already, talking about anger and, flipping the narrative on the head. It's not just about suppressing it, but really honoring it and finding out what it's trying to tell us about boundaries we need in place. And then also Rihanna Milne, who she shook us all to the core. She talked about 10 childhood traumas that influence the way we show up to relationships. We all have these childhood traumas that we need to deal with.
And when she's just jumping in for a second, when she started with the list, I'm like, yeah, really? This everybody? As she went through this list, I tell you what, I'm like, yeah,
You're
yeah,
like,
okay,
there was that.
yeah. And it's not things you would necessarily have thought of, and not necessarily things that were intentional. It could be that your parents were working hard to bring you up and they weren't around as much as they could have done, and you feel a little bit of abandonment as a result. There are all sorts of little things that could creep in there, and like, oh wow, and how that can play out in your relationships.
That understanding of childhood traumas and naming 10 of them really helped underscore what everybody else talks about in self-awareness, knowing your own insecurities, knowing the narrative you've been telling yourself and why you've been telling yourself that narrative, so you can change the script if it no longer serves you. But it really helped underscore why we all need to go on that self-awareness journey.
Yeah,
so much more we could say, but I'll stop there.
All right, I'll be quick then. Just a couple quickly from me. Really, in the sort of win at life category, we enjoyed the episode we did with James McDonald, who was talking about. I can't remember what the podcast was called. The episode was called, but it was about dads,
strong dads,
and what you need to be a strong dad. And he was talking about basically dads and mental health and how that can become a real issue for men. And especially in situations, I think his situation where he had been made redundant a couple of times, and just what it had done to his own self-esteem. And really the point there he was saying is you need to really take care of yourself. If you're in that situation, more so, but in general, you need to take care of yourself. And actually what he had done was put in place these, I can't remember, I think it was 5 things that he did, just simple daily practices that made him feel alive. Like one of them I remember was a cold shower. He'd wake up and start every day with a freezing cold shower. It's like, don't like doing this stuff, but I have it on my list of things to do. And it's just like, rather than just sort of loaf around the house as a couch potato doing nothing all day, it's like, okay, I'll do this cold shower. That'll get me up and going.
Wake me up for the day.
I think another one he did was whenever he put the kettle on, he'd do some push-ups. So kettle on, do some push-ups. Just something to do. I mean, it's 10 things to, but just, I think there were 5 things. I can't remember what the rest were, but he had these 5 things that he did. Simple things, but it was all about self-care, understanding, and just putting yourself in the fore.
Looking after your mental health, which was important. Yeah,
really important. And then the other sort of standout-ish moment in that context here was Mark Stephen Porro.
Oh yeah.
In his his book, and the episode of it was called A Cup of Tea on the Commode. And this is all about him caring for his elderly parent, his mother. And what was really interesting there, and something I hadn't thought of at all, but he said, look, he'd never had the opportunity of, he never had a long-term partner, and he never had children. And so he never had this concept of unconditional love. And that's what looking after his mother gave him. It actually gave him more than he was expecting. It's like, wow, unconditional love. I now feel that for the first time. And that was really interesting to observe.
And I love the way he spoke about, instead of just caring for his mother, like the practicals and the essentials, it was giving honor and dignity to his mom in her later years. So things like getting her hair done, getting her nails done, not wearing fuddy-duddy nighties, but nice negligees. He wanted to give her the dignity and restore her as much as possible to the woman he knew her to be.
Even though it meant he had to look like a bit of a perv going around the department stores buying these like, we were getting some funny looks, but it's like, no, this is what my mom used to do. I need to go get this stuff for her.
Yeah, that was
a joyful last few years of her life.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's amazing.
So we've had a really good look back over 100 episodes, and I guess just as we come to a close, what's next? What can people look forward to with the next 100 episodes?
That's a really great question, because so many things have been happening in the business. I'm sure that will shape the conversations that we have going forward. So I mentioned Reverend Peterson Fatal, and his work with Compassionate Leadership. He's asked us to partner with him to take the skills, developing skills of compassionate leadership into the creative industries. So we've shaped a 3-series workshop for the creatives industry. And some of the conversations that we'll be having will be coming out of the work that we've done there. We have to say, without planning this, we actually did some work with the BBC recently, and that's our first success story where we helped them significantly shift the scores on the level of employee engagement. So maybe without naming our client there, maybe that will be one of the next podcasts to come up, talking about the work in the creatives industry.
Yeah.
What else?
I mean, who knows where the next season, the next chapter will go. But the themes that have been coming through at the moment are interesting for us. So there's stuff that we've been doing in the space of real estate, which Andrew's actually been taking the lead on. But that for us was not an area that we thought of at all. Where in the US actually, real estate, what do they call them here in the UK? Estate agents, but they are very relational people in terms of relating to their clients, and you find a lot of people who are in this space will go back to the same estate agent or real estate agent who you bought from the last time, etc., if you got on well with them. So it's actually important to have those relationships in place. And where we've been really blessed and fortunate is the course that we've developed for real estate agents actually currently in the States was recently accredited by the Florida Real Estate
Florida
Board.
Board Professional Development
Part of
Board.
professional development for real estate agents going forward. So we thought, there's real interest in this. In fact, this week, where are we today? This week?
Yeah.
This week, the first course rolls out.
Wow.
On
Watch the
Thursday
space, see how
in
that
Florida.
goes.
Check it out if you're there.
Yeah. But it's really interesting to see the interest coming from people saying, actually, this stuff is really interesting and can help me improve the quality of the relationships that I have with my client base.
And therefore the results that I achieve.
Therefore the results. And, even some of the work that we've done, well, all the work that we've done really has highlighted to us that getting relationships right is interesting and nice, and people like getting on well with the people around them. The example we like to quote is Federated Hermes. They're happy to talk about it, an asset management client here in the UK, where as a result of the work that we did, certainly with one team in particular, they bubbled up to be recognized across the firm globally, internally, as the nicest team, or certainly one of the nicest teams to work in. And that was interesting. They're like, yeah, pat on the back. But when the firm also realized that these guys had top results, at least in the top 3 of actual hard business results, they're like, okay, we need to understand what's going on there, because there's some secret sauce going on in there that we want to roll out across the rest of the firm. So it's that recognition that being nice and getting relational skills is not just a nice to have. It actually translates into bottom line benefits. That's what gets people's attention. And that's been a real big learning for us as we've been on this. And we plan to do more of that as we go forward.
That's helped crystallize what it is we do. And it is about developing these, intentionally developing these relational behaviors and culture that drive performance and deliver results. And because of that articulation, we realize that for the world of venture capital, startup, scale up, what we do is vital, because you want to become intentional about the cultures that will drive performance, help you to scale and help you to achieve results, and give the investors their money back plus X amount more, etc., etc. So it's really shaping conversations that we're having in the corporate world and conversations that we're therefore having with our podcast guests. So loads more to come as we refine and see how relationships impact our lives and our wealth, our bottom line results.
Amazing. And again, just a massive congratulations on 100 episodes. I really enjoy listening to them as someone in the audience, and I know that they're really helpful for people. So I just want to say thank you for sticking with it, because I know it's never easy. But yeah, you've done an amazing job.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the challenge, the kick in the beginning in the nicest possible way to just get out there. It's been an amazing journey, and we're more excited about the next 100 to come. And so we have to take the opportunity to, again, say to our audience, say to our podcast guests, say to all those who have been subscribing. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. But saying to everybody, thank you for valuing what we do, for being with us on the journey, for shaping what we've become so far. And we look forward to journeying with you through to the next 100.
And also for saying to our Podfather, thank you again for getting us on this journey. It's not an easy ride doing a podcast. It's certainly a weekly one, with the preparation, the filming, the editing, etc., etc., etc. But it's kind of like having a baby. I was just thinking there.
Funny that. Full circle
You got
conversation.
wet bottom, change nappies, all that,
Yeah.
deal with all the sick, etc. But the joy that you get coming from it, the benefits coming from the learning that you get coming from the growth, the development,
the resources,
the
the contacts, the connections.
it makes it all worth it. So, I mean, if there are other people out there thinking about a podcast, I'd say think carefully about your why. It's like doing a PhD.
And
if
the
you want to do a
value.
PhD, you don't just do it for the title.
Yeah.
You've got to have a really strong reason, but there's real merit in doing it as long as your why is compelling enough. So yeah, do it if you're thinking about it, but it can be great.
And focus on the value.
Focus
What's
on
the
the value that
value
you're
that
adding.
you're delivering?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tolu. Most appropriate that you would be doing this with us. And I guess to the audience, for episode 100 of our podcast, Building Healthy Relationships, it's a wrap. See you next time.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe and we'll see you next time.